All right, so I want to make a video updating everyone on the new cases in both Canada and Alberta as usual, and then talk about some other important stuff. And there was one pretty important thing that came out yesterday, so let's get right into it here. Canada's up to 11,747 cases with 152 dead, so I think that would make the death rate, it looks like it's going up a little bit. We hovered around 1% for a while, now we're up at around 1.5, so it is going up a little bit, but again, it's not that much, and it's not still not near the average of the world, so that's something that's still very good. Alberta had 97 new cases yesterday, which is less than 2 days ago, but the second most since this whole thing has started, so that's not a good sign. They are down from yesterday, but again, I would give it another couple days at least before we recognize a trend. Hopefully it continues to go down again. But last time it did that, it jumped right back up again. So we'll see how that goes. We also have 13 dead. Calgary continues to be the area that is most affected. They have about 2/3 of the cases by looks of things. So again, Calgary's the area you really got to worry. Edmonton to a degree as well. And then other than that, I mean, you don't really have to worry, but there's no guarantees, obviously. Clearly, 3 people have died in the north zone, so if that's in a specific area, then I would be worried about that. They're now showing the recovered cases. According to this, 174 people have recovered, which that there's 968 people that have it, so I'm not sure how up to date that is, but we'll see. 57,096 people have been tested, so the amount of people that have been tested continues to go up by a lot. Um, but yeah, uh, clearly that of 57,000 people tested, just 968 have tested positive. So if you think you might have it, it's unlikely, but again, it doesn't hurt to get tested. But again, it's completely up to you. If you're a healthy person, you're young, you're healthy, the chances of you dying are incredibly low. So personally, I wouldn't worry, but again, it's a personal decision. Do what you want to do. So let's get to some other stuff here because that's about all as far as that stuff goes. So Patty Hayju, who is the Minister of Health, or sorry, the Health Minister of Canada, she basically was asked yesterday, and she basically sided with the Chinese Communist Party, claiming their data is accurate. And again, it clearly is not accurate. It clearly is not accurate. No one with a pulse, a shred of critical thinking skills, would trust China's numbers. But yet here we have the Health Minister of Canada, and pretty much by default, the government of Canada siding with the Chinese government. And again, that just goes to show just how incredibly, uneasy and, terrible this is that, we can't even come to criticize the country that unleashed this on the world, that completely ruined the world economy and may have brought in and caused the worst, the worst recession the world's ever seen. And again, we can't bring ourselves to criticize them. And that just goes to show just how partisan things are. And again, when I bring up the fact that a lot of these lefties out there are very sympathetic to, or not, or may even fully support communism, goes to show that that's probably not a stretch. That's probably not a stretch because, again, this is something that we talk about the political divide nowadays and what's causing it and why it's so bad. Well, we have one side that refuses to criticize the most fringe people of one side. Like, imagine if the majority of right wingers were to refuse to criticize, the actual far right, not the fact that the left thinks that most people, prominent figures on the right are far right. Imagine if they actually refuse to criticize, the Nazis aren't a perfect example, but let's just take them. Imagine if they refuse to criticize them. Again, imagine the outrage, but you have the left who refuses to criticize a country that has millions of people in internment camps where not only that, a lot of them are Muslims, which the left claims to care so much about Muslims. Funny how little they care when it comes to something like this. But again, this should be something that both sides can agree on. It should be completely nonpartisan, but yet we have the left making it partisan, and it's largely the left. Let's just be honest. And again, absolutely astounding. But the other thing here too, this is from Maxime Bernier. He goes on to say, in January, the World Health Organization said there's no evidence of person-to-person transmission. It said no restrictions on China were necessary. It treated Chinese lies and lauded China for everything it was doing. Why do we trust this organization? Again, it makes no sense. They're clearly wrong about this. It clearly has person-to-person transmission. There's no way that they would have not known that at that point. And it was also completely wrong that restrictions on China were not necessary. And again, clearly they were necessary. Clearly putting restrictions on China earlier would have helped. There's no debating that stuff. There's no debating that stuff. If you want to have a debate on just how corrupt they are, fine. But they're clearly at least a little bit corrupt. They're clearly in the pockets of China. And again, that's something that should be very concerning to people. I'm not sure why it isn't, but again, makes no sense. Something that again, this should be something that's completely nonpartisan. Both sides can agree on, but yet we have a lot of these lefties, namely, what's her name, the Theresa Tam, citing all this stuff. Oh, masks aren't necessary. Travel restrictions won't work. All this kind of stuff. When we know masks help, we know masks help. They always cite how South Korea, how effective their strategy was at going about this. And one of the main things that they do is the people wear masks. Again, it makes zero sense. These people have no credibility. Yes, I understand that some of them are technically experts in the field, but when you're getting basic stuff wrong, I don't care if you're an expert. Like, if you're an economist and you can't even explain basic supply and demand, I don't care if you have a degree, if you can't explain the most basic of basic stuff, you have zero credibility in my books, and that goes for all these people. Patty Haju, Theresa Tam, the World Health Organization, all and by pretty much by default, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, considering they're people that basically work for them. Um, yeah, those kind of people too. And again, I really hate ragging on Justin Trudeau so much. Honestly, it does get old. But again, until most people wake up to this kind of stuff, I have to keep talking about it because the mainstream media is not holding them accountable. YouTube on all these social media sites generally censor um, views that are critical of the left. So I have to keep hammering away until it's balanced out. Once it's balanced out, I don't think it ever will be, but once it's balanced out, I will lay off. But again, until then, I got to keep going. So the last thing I wanted to talk about here is this tweet from Stefan Molyneux. He said, "Imagine if neo-Nazi activists had been experimenting with bioweapons and released one into the world, then threatened and killed doctors to cover it up." And that's basically what China did. They either unintentionally, through terrible, unsafe practices, released this onto the world, or they intentionally released it onto the world. It's one of the two. It's not in the middle. This whole it came from a guy eating a bat. I don't believe that for 1 second. It was either through terrible security, horrible, very little to no precautionary measures. Um, it was released, by accident, but at some point it was going to happen based off how lax the procedures were, or it was intentionally released. Honestly, I think you can make an argument for either one, but either way, China's to blame. Either way, they lied up to the world about how bad it was. They've been covering it up ever since. They've killed, or at the very least, captured and threw in prison multiple doctors. And again, this is something that should be easy that we can agree on. The only way that we're going to fix this political, disagreement, going on between the left and the right nowadays is we can first figure out the stuff we agree on. Because if there's stuff we should be able to agree on, like this is stuff we should be able to agree on, and the fact that we can agree on this just goes to show which side is more responsible. Like if we have one side that can't even agree that a communist country that has millions of people in internment camps and oppresses their citizens and does stuff like this, if we can't agree that they should be condemned and held responsible for this, we're never going to agree on anything, not anything, because this is the first thing that we should be able to agree on, and we can't. So that just goes to show just how bad the mainstream media is in Canada for defending this. We've had the mainstream media, touting Chinese talking points that are clearly false, clearly false. And we have, government of Canada touting this kind of stuff, and we refuse to criticize them. And the world economy is at a standstill because of China, and yet millions of people or tens of hundreds of millions of people are suffering, and yet we can't even bring ourselves to criticize the country that's pretty much exclusively responsible for this. Like, come on, come on. It's absolutely astounding, absolutely astounding. But anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. I've talked enough. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. I do have my PayPal and email linked in the description. I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already.